Hello, I'm Rifushi and welcome to Adulting 101. Today we are going to... Am I in the wrong class? I'm sorry to interrupt, Professor, but what makes you think you can teach anyone about being an adult? Last time I checked, you were still trying to not burn your toast in the toaster. It's true. I'm not an adult. I burn my toast, I sleep in, and I buy books I don't read. I may not know all the answers, but as your professor today, I will bless you with what I do know. I had imagined that my life would be a straightforward timeline. That after graduating high school, I'd go to university, and my end goal was to simply secure a job or be homeless on the streets. And after that, I'd become an adult at some point, and that'd be good enough for me. Now that I do all the boring chores and file taxes like I imagine adults do, it makes me wonder, when is this adult thing going to hit me? I started to think that being an adult must be something I don't know, since it's been anything but straightforward. If you felt lost in life, it's likely you've also tried web surfing for answers. In my experience, I've watched tons of YouTube videos and read many Reddit posts from people of all ages and felt comforted that I wasn't alone in this experience. In fact, everywhere you look on the internet, it's a common experience to feel you're not ready to be an adult. But when you browse social media or step into daily life, it seems like everyone knows where they're going. Although feeling comforted at the time, in a few weeks somehow you're just as lost as if you've never seen it. And ultimately nothing changes. It's an odd feeling, worrying that everyone else is doing better than you, but also feeling that you should be grateful for your life, wondering if the problem is just you. And without any actual answers on the internet, where are you supposed to start? Let's first talk about what it means to be an adult. By definition in the US, you are legally an adult once you turn 18. But for most, the day you turn 18 feels no different from the previous day. Nothing really happens. So what's the big deal about the number 18? It could be summed up by legal reasons of when someone should be allowed to vote, drink, work. These are all important questions that lawmakers consider to set boundaries between minors and adults. But there's a difference between legally being an adult and feeling like an adult. I don't believe there's a moment where you suddenly feel like an adult, and in fact, even adults don't feel like they're adults. But even if that's true, what differentiates me from people who know what they're doing? Well, there's a quote that goes, "Some people grow older, but never grow up." And the growing up part is what I consider to be adulting. But growing up is not as straightforward as doing chores or filing taxes. It's about finding a few of the answers you've been looking for. The reason I've been thinking about adulting more lately is because I stayed over at my friend's house for a few days. I noticed how disciplined she was as I hung out with her. I walked over 10,000 steps with her every day, and by 11 p.m. each night she would ask if I wanted to sleep yet, and she seemed pretty happy with her schedule. One day we were walking out of a museum and she asked what my favorite trait in a person was. I said something along the lines of, "My favorite trait is someone who knows what they want and does what they want well." It doesn't really matter what it is. It could even be that they're really good at going on vacation. I really admire people like that. And this is because I've always found it difficult to decide what I want to do. I get affected greatly by others' opinions, so I end up doing things I think I should do. Then I start to believe it's also what I want to do and lie to myself that I should be enjoying it too. After realizing this, my first step was asking myself, when nothing is stopping me, what do I want to do? The simple answer is to first decide what you want. Has there been anything that you've always wanted to do or get back into? Then start with that. But if you're unsure that's really what you want, the more complicated answer is that there are an infinite amount of decisions you could make at any given moment. Your day is filled with hundreds of decisions that you make, like a connect the dots diagram that determines your life. Worrying about wasting time or doing something that could be more productive causes you to do nothing at all. When in reality, all the things you do in life are just meant to waste time anyway, so you might as well be happy doing it. And the honest answer is, you don't know what you want until you're already doing it. It matters very little what exactly you do compared to the fact that you did something that you chose to do. Next is to plan what you are going to do. It can be as simple as, I'm going to sketch tonight, while avoiding vague and huge tasks like, I'm going to become a great artist by next week. The next step is the second most important decision, which is to do it or not do it. Starting with the not doing it route, this is what I like to call the cycle of suffering, also known as the New Year's resolution cycle. Basically, you decide to start drawing, but you end up stopping without much progress, and that leads you to feel incapable. One day, you feel miserable enough to want to make a change in your life again. The next year rolls around and you decide to draw for real this time, but ultimately the same thing happens. But let's say you do it and you start sketching. This is the first break from the cycle of feeling lost because you can now learn a bit about yourself. But the most important branch is, when you get frustrated, will you solve the problem or will you ignore it? The issue with ignoring your problems now is that you are kicking the can down the road, and that leads directly back into the cycle of suffering because you haven't learned a thing. But let's say you notice you're frustrated. If you're unsure of what to do about it, I personally like to journal the answers to these questions. How do you feel? Why do you feel this way? Have you felt this before? And what can you do to feel better? What you learn about yourself should ultimately reduce your frustrations. Only then can you learn more about yourself and guide what you want in the future, creating this cycle of growing. You may even realize that you want to keep drawing or do something else, and that's totally up to you. So this is the full cycle. Suffering happens when you ignore your problems, and growing happens when you prioritize your happiness. Let's take you in the present moment. For some, it's very natural to worry about the past, thinking about how you shouldn't have taken a nap earlier or shouldn't have eaten all that ice cream. But everyone does things and realizes it was a good thing or a bad thing in the future. So it's a waste to let the fear of making those same mistakes paralyze what you could be doing now. And for others, it's natural to feel anxious about the future, that if you don't draw right now, then you'll never become a great artist. Hypotheticals are easy to get lost in, but it puts a lot of pressure on your next action, when ultimately you don't know what will happen in the future. It's very difficult to enjoy your life when you're constantly walking on eggshells of doing the wrong thing. There's another quote, "Yesterday is history, and tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift, that's why they call it the present." And while it may be true, unfortunately, it doesn't help knowing my failures were history and my worries are pointless because it's a mystery. The thing is, people in either cycle may not understand the other, since they simply approach life differently. It's very difficult to leave an unhealthy mindset and stop thinking poorly of oneself when that's all they do. Whereas a healthy person wouldn't understand why someone would choose to subject themselves to perpetual sadness. Neither are necessarily trying to not understand the other, but it's just a matter of the way people think. Regardless of how it may be easier or more difficult for others, the more important question is, how can you start trying to enjoy your life? Decide what you want to do now. The more you do, the more you will learn about yourself, your boundaries, your needs, until respecting yourself and your feelings becomes a priority. So to answer the question, how do I become an adult? There's no guide to adulting, but instead there are things you just do for the sake of taking care of yourself. And that's what it means to grow up, taking responsibility for your own happiness. Your hopes and dreams are on the line, and your happiness is a choice to fight for. On a day-to-day basis, it's not really that serious, but what's the point of living if all you're looking forward to is avoiding it? And how do you know if your decision is the one thing you want to dedicate your life to? You don't. So just do something you want, and if it makes you miserable, then adjust what you're doing so you're not as miserable. So do things that make you happy. Nobody can tell you what you want because they're not you. There's nothing wrong with playing games. Take your nap and own it, and who cares if you only draw cute girls? If you want to grow up, nothing else should have the reins to your life other than yourself. That is the first step to becoming that so-called adult. Alright, class is over, but you're welcome to stay behind for a little bit. Speaking of adulting, one time my mom brought me to the DMV for my driver's license, and while I was waiting in line, my mom went to get something from the car. And the DMV officer shows up and asked if I was 18. I said, yeah, I just turned 18. And she was like, you don't hold on to your own passport and documents? Aren't you an adult? And I started panicking. As an adult, I'm supposed to know things, but I didn't know anything. Thankfully, my mom showed up and saved me. But would you look at that, now I don't have to go to the DMV anymore. Anyway, it's been a long 2025, and a lot of what I've been doing this year has been transformed into our lesson today. I wanted to discuss adulting from this mental health perspective since while it may not be what people think adults are, it helps me feel a bit less lost and enjoy life more. My main point is that there's no guide to feeling like an adult, but it doesn't matter, just live your life. Okay class, that's enough of Professor Rifushi today. Class is dismissed, and remember to do your homework written in the description below. Bye bye!